Hey. Time for another out-of-this-world story from rSpace. Sometimes we have to give people a taste of their own medicine. And sometimes that means making your cheating girlfriend's amateur porn surveillance an exhibit at an art gallery. Today on rSpace, we don't feel bad for cheaters. We call them out on their BS. Hi guys. I've been reading some of the posts here, and I thought to share mine too. My name is Aaron. I'm 32 years old, and I used to work with customs. For those who don't know what that is, it means I dealt with clearing imported and exported goods moving in and out of the country. It's a really stable and well-paying job, so I was financially unbothered and led a generally comfortable lifestyle. However, because of the nature of my job, I rarely ever had time to do the normal stuff people do with their time and money. I mostly rotated between work and home, so I barely had time for women and relationships in general. I met Sarah by accident. We bumped into each other on the road and sort of hit it off from there. Granted that I almost stumped on her chihuahua. We met up a few more times after that day, and the following month we started dating. Before then, we shared our past experiences on dating and the likes. I found out she was fresh out of a relationship she had ended about 3 months from when we met. Her problem was that her last boyfriend, Andrew, wasn't as ambitious as she would have liked or some crap. It bothered her that the person she was with had no concrete plans for the future. I didn't think too much of it at the time because it was really none of my business. The relationship was somewhat steady while it lasted. We were nearing our 3 or 4 month anniversary when she decided to introduce me to her parents. At the same period, she landed a job at the local museum as a gallerist, and with my job, we started to see less of each other. In the custom world, we had what we called rush hours. Those were the busiest periods for us. We worked overtime and kept late night trying to sort out imports and exports to make sure they are cleared without delay. When this time came, I was forced to stay away from home and away from Sarah. Regardless, we maintained a steady call time of 2 hours every day. We spoke and shared details of our day, which led me to believe that everything was fine. Well, it wasn't. Things got a little heated at work when heavy amounts of cocaine were found in one of the cargoes, and it quickly blew out of proportion, which made matters even worse. There was a whole investigation process, and the federal agents didn't want us to leave, so we remained for another 2 days. By the time the whole issue had settled, an entire week had gone. I got home to meet Sarah waiting for me, and at the very least, she seemed excited to see me. But when I started kissing her, trying to get her in the mood to initiate sex, she asked me to stop, telling me she was exhausted from work. That much I understood, so I retired to the bathroom for some me time. While I was busy, my eyes caught up to the compartment where I kept my contraceptives. I started stocking up ever since I started dating Sarah. While we were sexually active, we still wanted to remain safe. I looked at the condoms and counted. One of it was missing. I thought that was weird because I remembered restacking a fresh batch earlier in the week, and I clearly had not had sex with Sarah since then. So I didn't understand how one could have been missing. Still, I dismissed it and concentrated on finishing first. But by the time I was done, I was too exhausted to even think about it, so I went straight to bed. Everything basically returned to normal after that. We were in a good place and we were happy. One day, I decided to spice up our relationship by doing something very impulsive. Actually, the thought came to me on my way back from work. There was this boy that had a small kiosk where he sold newspapers. Everyone knew he sold weed, and the newspaper thing was a cover-up for the entire operation. Upon seeing him, I decided to do something I hadn't done since college. I bought weed. I knew Sarah would be down for it. She was almost always impulsive and liked to live in the moment. And for a hot second, I thought that was the best thing about her. Well, I was wrong. Impulsiveness is not a trait you want your girlfriend to have, not if she's extremely attractive and is a borderline sex freak. So I got home and suggested the idea of sharing a blunt, which she gladly agreed to. At the end of the first blunt, I realized that the strain I bought was a lot stronger than what I was normally used to, and I tried to warn Sarah to be careful, but she was already gone, which was fine because we ended up having another mind-blowing sex. Once we were done, she fell right asleep. I was still reeling in the high when her phone beeped once, twice, then fell silent again. After a while, the beeping started again, and I was going to ignore it until I saw Andrew's name pop on her phone. I wasn't too sure about the details of her last relationship, but I was sure I had heard her rant to me about a certain Andrew. Either way, at that point, my curiosity was piqued, so I picked up her phone, an iPhone 12 Pro. Unfortunately, I couldn't see what the messages were about from the notification bar, and I didn't know what her passcode was, so I couldn't unlock it. I admit, for someone who was supposed to be her boyfriend, I acted way too nonchalant about it. For some reason, I trusted her, and I didn't even as much ask her why her ex was texting in the middle of the night. Fast forward to 2 months after, Sarah came back from an exhibition at the local art gallery very excited to share everything she had seen. I was home all day and prepared the both of us dinner. Over food, Sarah showed me images from the event while giving a rundown of the art style, the medium used, and a bit about the painter or artists. I was scrolling through her phone when she left to attend to knock on the door. I think she had a delivery she had to attend to or something. Anyways, her phone was still with me, and I was looking through the pictures when another text from Andrew popped on the notification bar. At first, I didn't want to check it because, well, I valued privacy and I didn't want to be a hypocrite. But in a matter of seconds, about 5 texts came in. Yeah, I could. I didn't think we would be back here doing this. You never should have left. I kind of feel bad for the little guy, you know? Anyways, when would you be coming over to see me again? The odd thing about everything was that the rest of the chats were cleared, so I naturally became suspicious. I cleared the messages from Andrew too, and when she returned to the dining table with a bottle of champagne, I pretended like nothing was up and handed her back her phone, even commenting on some of the art pieces that I liked, even though I couldn't give a crap less about it at that point. I was infuriated, but at the same time, I didn't want to jump into conclusions, so I held on and watched. My attitude towards her became cold, and one day, she called me out on it, telling me that I had changed. I apologized and told her the stress of work was getting to me. I then told her I had to travel for the weekend to go see my parents in Arizona. Pretending to be polite, she asked if she could follow me, but I told her it was for a family emergency and that when the time was right, I would take her to see my parents. In reality, my parents lived abroad in the Dominican Republic, but she didn't know that. My apartment is basically furnished with small devices, so it was fairly unnoticeable when I bugged it with a camera right at the corner of the ceiling. It was almost impossible to detect, and it was camouflaged perfect by a light bulb hanging in front of it. 3 days after I traveled, Andrew came visiting. Sarah had the entire apartment in pristine condition. She cleaned, cooked, and even got a Netflix movie ready for the both of them to watch. When he came, they did all those things together, and mid-movie, their conversation switched into a full-blown makeout session. Then, they conveniently proceeded to have sex right on my favorite couch. I knew it would be a mistake to confront them, especially in the state that I was in. I was angry, and there was no telling how I would have reacted if I saw them in person. I knew there were always better alternatives to handling situations like that, and that it required tact and a lot of patience. So I sat back and clicked on that record button. I returned home the following day. It took a lot of willpower to pretend normal, like I hadn't seen everything that transpired between her and Andrew on my couch. She too acted like her normal self throughout, and I became even all the more irritated as I wondered how many times she must have played the role of the perfect girlfriend despite being a cheat. On several occasions, I almost lost my composure and confronted her, but I waited patiently for an ideal opportunity to present itself, and it came the following evening when she informed me of a presentation she was going to be giving at the museum on the history of heliographic or whatever. Anyways, it couldn't have been any more perfect. I asked her how she intended to give the presentation, and she gave me a brief but very uninteresting rundown of how she planned to deliver her presentation on the topic. Unprovoked, she asked me about the people that were going to be in attendance and how much it was going to help her take her career to the next stage. Even her parents were going to be present. I offered to help her with the presentation by creating a PowerPoint presentation that I would project to help her create a visual representation of her points as she made them. Naturally, she accepted and thanked me for being the world's best boyfriend. I prepared 2 separate slideshows for her presentation. One was the actual version that she used to practice. The other was one I inserted the recorded clip of her and Andrew going at it on my couch. On the day of the presentation, I called in sick from work and escorted her to the museum to help her set up the auditorium. Luckily, the technician was nice enough to let me handle the projector slide alone and was glad that he got to go on his lunch break early. In the following hour after we arrived and everything was set up, her guests started to troop in one after the other. The museum's curator, manager, her professor from college, her parents, her sibling, and Andrew. The fact that she had invited him made my convictions to punish her all the more solid. The seminar started with a welcome speech from the curator, and in no time, Sarah was introduced to the stage for her lecture. She began by giving her heartfelt appreciation to the moderators for providing her with the opportunity to speak to an esteemed crowd, and to me for being her support system. I had to smile because she had just created a narrative for people to understand the surprise I had planned. After all of that, she jumped right into the presentation, walking confidently about the podium, pointing at the images behind her exactly as we had rehearsed. By the time the video came up, she was unsuspecting, and misinterpreted the murmurs from the audience as a sign of interest, which made the scene all the more hilarious for me. The video started with her sitting on the couch next to Andrew. Since the camera had no microphone to pick up their words, their conversation was muted, but it didn't matter. I put the video on a time-lapse, and quickly the scene shifted to when he started to undress her on the couch. By that time, Sarah caught on that the attention of the crowd was no longer fixated on her anymore, and turned to the projection behind her. "Fuck!" her voice echoed through the hall, as she turned to look at me from the technical area. When our eyes met, and I made sure they did, I gave her a look, practically dared her to order me to turn it off. Slowly, people got to their feet and began to exit the hall with looks of disgust etched on their faces. I left the video play on for people that chose to stay, like her parents who couldn't believe what they were watching and wanted to confirm for sure that the person in the video truly was their daughter. Sarah came up to me after the hall had cleared, and I made sure that the first I did was to throw a fit of laughter in her face. She had a look torn between anger, shame, and humiliation, like she wasn't sure if she was to lash out at me or to plead with me. That was enough satisfaction for me. I knew she wouldn't think about dating or a relationship, much less being with Andrew for a long time after what had just happened, so it was like killing one bird twice with the same stone, since the other bird, being Andrew, I couldn't figure out what to do to him. I think 2 months or thereabout, we sent out for an ad for an opening in the office, and guess who decided to show up for an interview? Andrew! Although I couldn't say for sure if he knew I worked at the custom office. If not, he wouldn't have bothered coming at all. Knowing I'd be his boss and make his entire stay there miserable. Anyways, when he showed up, it suffice to say that I was shocked at the audacity, but the fact that he might have been unsuspecting made me rethink my decision on lunging at him on the spot. Plus, he didn't seem to know who I was at that moment, so I thought to toy with him for a while and offered him the job. It was a fairly well-paying job, so he was very quick to thank me and all. The week he resumed, I forced enough tasks on him that he could manage, especially for someone on his experience. I called out his every mistake publicly and openly faulted his incompetence in front of his colleagues. In a week, he had already had enough and came with a resignation letter. I was a bit surprised with the fact that he had enough dignity to offer a resignation letter. I expected him to just vanish one day and never show up to work. But since he had willfully presented himself to me, I decided to tell him who I was. After I did, he dropped the letter quietly on my desk and left my office. No doubt humiliated. Now, I'm not a bad person, but I don't resonate with cheating. I think cheating is a disgusting, despicable, abominable act that shows just how disrespectful and undisciplined a person really was. Besides being a display of bad character, it is literally a slap of the face of your partner. I am certain both Sarah and Andrew now understand that there are consequences to every action. You said for some reason you trusted her. I mean, it's not too much to ask, and we usually should trust our partners to not screw around on us. It's disgusting to see that she was able to act completely normal towards you in your own space, as if nothing happened, and then had the balls to invite him to the presentation. I'm sorry, OP. She's sick for doing that to you. I don't believe for 1 second he didn't know that you worked there. I'm positive he did. It was probably his one last act to see if he could get the upper hand on you, like he seemingly did with your ex. Joke's on him. Dude can play that game. I'm glad you did what you did. He didn't deserve 1 ounce of your respect. How can anybody take anyone that seriously? You're also right about cheating. It is disgusting, despicable, and abominable. And for her to go back to a guy who didn't work out to begin with? That I'll never understand. What do you think? Thanks for joining us today on rSpace. Like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. We'd hate for you to miss it. Until next time.